Masonic Lite podcast. This is Past Master Moyer calling with my review/critique of episode 106 entitled Valley of Harrisburg Cigar Smoker and Pig Roast. I was in attendance at that function. I drove the Grand Smoke up for the day, had a great time. Anyway, in this episode, there were some really good interviews, starting with Bob and Faisal. I forget Bob's last name. Faisal's a Mason from Aruba. It's very interesting to listen how long it takes to get their Scottish Rite degrees. Glad to hear that Hiram and Solomon Cigars is an official sponsor of Masonic Lite podcast. I enjoyed the interview with Lynn Baker, Second Lieutenant Commander, District Deputy Grand Master, and he's the president of the Board of Governors for the Learning Center. And the last interview with John Cook was very interesting. John's doing a great job as secretary at that valley in Harrisburg. Too bad he's not at the Valley of Reading. Dutchy Doug, hilarious again with the pumpkin launch story. Sorry to hear that the Schmidt and Jaeger feud is back on. Brother Cronkite was very interesting again with his story from Waco, Texas. The worshipful master who said they had 3 people on the sideline. And finally, Maris, this was a really good show because you hardly said anything. But at the end, you told one of the dumbest jokes I've ever heard. Just knock it off, you putz. I'll be in touch, guys. Bye.
From the new recording lair located deep beneath the Wine and Spirit store in Ephrata, Pennsylvania.
You're listening to the Masonic Lite podcast.
Studio 665 presents Masonic Lite podcast. This show is recorded by Masons, for Masons, and is for entertainment purposes only. And please, no wagering.
This podcast is not endorsed by any Grand Lodge, and the ridiculous ramblings of the hosts are their own. And now, here's your host.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Well, here we are, Masonic Lite Podcast, episode number 108.
108.
Wow, 108.
That's holy.
Yeah, so we've got on the air with us tonight is a kind of a limited cast. We have our regulars, Tim, Jack, and Josh Lamberton. And we have our guest, Josh Gerstenlauer. Say hi, Josh Gerstenlauer.
Hello there.
And but Larry is missing.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Tim, would you read Larry's email? Do you have that handy?
Yeah.
No. HIPAA, dude. HIPAA. We got HIPAA. We got
Something about he was looking over, he was listening to Josh's reading of Pike's lecture, and he went into vertigo. No.
All right, so let's go around. So we're going to talk to Josh in a little bit about Albert Pike, which is always a fun topic in Freemasonry. And us guys in the Northern Masonic jurisdiction really don't know much, so we'll get to learn something.
Yeah.
So, Tim, what have you been up to Masonically?
Yeah. So, there've been a lot of cancellations lately. The one thing that I did participate in since we were last together was the Harrisburg Lodge of Perfection. Did have a meeting, and we had the virtual reunion, the last of the virtual reunions from the Scottish Rite of the Northern Masonic jurisdiction on the 14th. But then, since then, it seems like there have been a lot of cancellations. The Valley of Harrisburg's reunion got canceled. A bunch of stuff this week got canceled. My understanding is a couple of Masonic districts in this area have pretty well shut down for a month or so. And so that's been really about it since we were last together.
Jack, what have you been up to?
Well, I do my usual Monday night Masonic education at the lodge for the new candidates. So we've done that a couple of times, and they are very excited. The guys are learning the ritual work. They're learning the oaths and obligations the way they should. We're talking about, what does this mean, that kind of stuff, and they're really digging it. So that's exciting when you get positive energy back from them. Otherwise you sound like the math teacher in Ferris Bueller. You're just kind of droning on. But these guys are great. They're digging it. They're loving the history and stuff. And in fact, Albert Pike came up. One of the candidates and entered apprentice said, what books are out there? What were your first books when I came in? He's asking me. And then he mentioned Born in Blood. And when I stopped laughing, I said, yes, that was the first book I read. And second was Morals and Dogma. So I went from the ridiculous to the sublime. And I've spent the next 15 years trying to figure out what happens in the middle. So, Masonically speaking, yeah, well, it's easy to do, and down and around and up. But Masonically speaking, I haven't done bupkis other than that. We got the letter from the District Deputy Grand Master that District 1 is geschlossen and go Gesundheit. And so we're just gonna, take it how it comes. I guess I suggested that we use the black Knight's Quarantine jewels as the past master jewels for 2020.
I think that's a great idea.
I think we should.
Yeah, and actually, I forgot one thing. I did go to Grotto this past week, where our very own Jack got elected treasurer.
In absentia. Although I understand that the current office holder is refusing to concede, and
he's asking for a recount.
Yeah, no, he drove by my house and threw the shit out the window. That's what happened. No, he's been very gracious, and it's just it needs more attention than he has time for right now. So it's a good change, and hopefully I'll be able to launder all the money successfully.
Josh Lamberton, what's going on with you at the Masonic Center?
I have no idea. I don't know. I guess, yeah, we're not meeting there, obviously. I know that. So
you're not meeting anywhere right now, bro. Right. And you're going to stay worship a master until some time.
Yeah. So I'll be worshipful master next year as well. But you said about the Knight's Quarantine jewel. Does that mean I actually get one?
You'll get one in the studio. I'm going to bring
crickets.
I'll bring a bunch into the studio if we ever get back there.
What was the point of me earning one if everybody gets them for free?
Oh!
Well, I'm pretty sure our Josh earned it. He did the second biggest part in the thing.
Oh my God! Yeah, absolutely.
That wasn't directed at Josh. Just it sounds like there's a lot of medals being handed out here.
Oh man, dude!
Our friend.
Okay, Josh, thanks for joining us today. We'll be back next week with.
So, Josh Gerstenlauer, what have you been doing anything Masonically?
So this year, with everything being crazy, York Rite chapters kind of all, we don't have a lot of active members that at our meetings, so we kind of agreed that it would be best to not meet. And hey, no cases in York Rite. That's all I got to say. But we're trying to no. So our officers are going to stay the same. So I'm also going to remain as high priest next year. Only thing I have going on Masonically right now is I'm really, really deep into Albert Pike's head, and I did present in one video. It was almost 2 hours where I was trying to get my ideas out. It was a little repetitive. I was very tired. Long day. I don't know what grade, probably second grade, maybe kindergarten if it was a bad day. But the second video is probably going to be very little of me talking and mostly just presenting the little pieces that I've picked out, and chunks actually, from some of his books to kind of give actual textual evidence for my the things I was expressing in the original video. So,
well, we can't wait to hear what those were.
We're looking for the 30-minute. We're looking for the 30-minute version this evening.
Funny.
Yeah, tonight I made sure to take notes on the two possible topics for tonight, so that we can keep it nice and crispy, very very small, and we'll make sure to hit all the marks. I actually thought that the thoughts for tonight were very good. So whenever we get to that, we'll talk about Pike.
Okay, just know that if you start reading anything, you are being discombobulated.
No reading.
Okay, all right, good.
So, and just like the Emmys, I have your music to hook you off the stage already.
There it is. We're playing you out.
So, anyway, what have I been up to? So I did Grotto the other night. I guess the craziest thing right now is I'm secretary, also known as scribe for Tall Cedars, and it's my first year. So Tim doesn't have any sympathy for me, but because it's only 200 members, but the checks are just rolling in, and all the checks for different amounts, and they all want the money to go to different places. So our dues is 35. So, but they'll be like, send 5 to the Tall Cedar Foundation, send 5 as a booster. And, I kind of want to do good by these people, put it in the right places, but it's a pain in the ass. So
they'll never know.
They'll never know.
Yeah, that stupid obligation I took, I got to try.
Damn it.
Follow it.
Damn these obligations.
All right, well, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back, and we'll talk to Josh Gerstenlauer on his great uncle Albert Pike.
Why choose George J. Grove & Sons for your next home improvement project? At George J. Grove & Sons, we've built our reputation on quality and trust for more than 50 years. From planning to materials to installation, George J. Grove promises a home improvement experience second to none. Whether your goal is reducing energy costs, decreasing maintenance, updating curb appeal, or simply increasing the value of your home, the George J. Grove team will recommend and provide solutions that stand the test of time. Call 717-393-0859 for an estimate, or visit us at georgejgrove.com.
And we're back. Before we get to tonight's interview with Josh Gerstenlauer, just want to let everybody know that tonight's episode is being brought to you by our Patreons. And you too can be a Patreon by going to www.patreon.com/Masonic Lite Podcast. And for as little as $1 a month.
$1 damn dollar.
Just $1. You can keep this high-level content coming to you. And in fact, we have a brand new $1 contributor.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
Let us humiliate him publicly.
Yes, and that's what we intend to do. Brother R. Scott Hoover handed me a $10 bill and said, here, this is for sponsorship for the next 10 months for the podcast. And he said, if you want, you can advertise that I'll do painting. And if you have my phone number, call me. And if you don't, well, that's just too bad.
Pete, if we invest that $10 in the Tall Cedars Fund, in 100 years, it will be worth $10.04.
That's correct.
So that could be a thing. That's a windfall.
R. Scott tried to give me that $10, and I was already 4 Jamesons deep, and I said I politely declined.
Smart play.
I Tim can be trusted with it because it'll just go to the bartender if I take it.
So please help us out by joining and becoming one of our Patreons. And then we also want to thank our official cigar sponsor, Hiram and Solomon. Some of you that have been around events that we've been to recently know that we have a stash of cigars that they sent us. And if you have us at one of your events, one of us will probably show up with some cigars to sell you. And the proceeds from those come back to help support the show as well.
And we have little masks with little tiny holes in them that you can.
Yeah, so you can smoke your cigar through your mask.
Exactly.
So, Jack, why don't you take off and introduce our guest?
I will do that, Tim. Thank you for queuing me up there. And actually, our guest is our guest tonight because Tim said, Jack, this guy should be our guest. So here we are.
You like the way I delegated that?
I love that. It was brilliant. And so, as I said earlier, I did a deep dive on Albert Pike, and I read the entirety of Morals and Dogma without really understanding any of it. So now that I'm farther in, I can get it a little better, I think. And so when the idea of having a Pike expert on, that intrigued me. So, Josh, you are Masonically involved in Blue Lodge, York Rite, Scottish Rite, cottage cheese, whatever else you're involved in. Give us a little bit about you, and then tell us how it was that Albert Pike caught your fancy.
Well, let me start by saying, while it's acceptable to my palate, cottage cheese is not a part of my routine. But and also, we should be clear, I don't really identify as a Pike expert, but I do think I'm currently a Pikean scholar, you could say.
Pikean? Did you just make that up?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
all right.
Definitely.
I like it. I'm using it.
So I don't want to really be unleashed. I don't like to be unleashed because then we could be here for 2 hours. But I did kind of get a general kind of overview. I didn't know if you guys wanted to ask me questions or if you wanted me to just kind of spit my notes or how exactly you wanted to.
Well, let's start with how did you become aware of Albert Pike and his importance in Freemasonry, or his his very popular importance in Freemasonry?
Right. So it kind of just it was just a name for a while, to be honest. That I guess, because he's supposed to be this famous Scottish Rite person, and that's very revered, and so it kind of comes on your radar pretty quickly, even if you know nothing about them because most people don't really. I mean, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of people don't take the time to study the people that our organizations continue to keep in legend or circulation, so to speak.
True.
So, but that's something I really enjoy doing in general. I'm kind of known as a person that likes to study and research people's, both their heroes and villains, to kind of try and decipher the individual's true mode of being, just out of curiosity, purely curiosity. And you kind of attack it with both logic and literary analysis. So you can get multiple perspectives. But in general, he came on the radar recently because of current events, his statue coming down, kind of doing some research on Black Lives Matter, and also diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that plays into racism and racialization, facts about today. And also I've been making friends with a lot of Prince Hall Association brethren. So I'm kind of getting into Pike's association with them and his history with them. And also being in Scottish Rite, you get interested. And also Pike crossed a lot of the same fields that I'm interested in or are part of my own career, whether it's philosophy, psychology, linguistics, those topics. But honestly, all those things kind of stirring together, and my own nature of wanting to, prove the good guys good or the bad guys bad, I just kind of checked out Amazon and saw, holy smokes, I can get all these different texts printed. You can get his lectures, his letters, his artistic books, the Morals and Dogma, all those things are available on Amazon, surprisingly. I don't know if you can get like his ritual or anything like that, but you can get a lot of good text through Amazon, surprisingly. So once I did that, it kind of solidified things to the point where, it was time to present.
So you could almost pick any topic on the wheel, and Albert Pike was involved in it somehow or another. He was, to call him a polymath is almost an understatement. He was a religious scholar. He was a linguistic scholar. He was studying all of the interrelationships between all these things. He was military. He was political. He was all of this at a time when the country was just exploding westward. And let's talk, Josh, if you can, and I'm sure you can, about the part of his political military career that involved the Native American dilemma, or just the horrible treatment of the Native Americans. Pike was very much involved in trying to do the right thing for that population. So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, so I can. That is actually touched on the part of that I have prepared here in my notes, because jumping ahead a little bit, the question, and I know that I'm probably jumping ahead on somebody, but it was, how did my view of Pike evolve? And exactly what you asked me is addressed in, because this is the easiest way that's going to keep me within the time frame and make it distinguishable and understandable for multiple audiences. So he really has an interesting experience. And when I first looked into Pike, I thought, here's a creepy old Confederate with alleged ties to the KKK. This is my notes that I'm reading from, so bear with me. And then I kind of, by reading him backwards, I kind of loved him at first, because there was that kinship of being a polymath and having the touch. I don't have a political career, but I certainly studied enough politics. I don't have a military career. I did spend 2 years training to be an officer in the Army, but for reasons that don't need explained, it wasn't for me on a lot of levels. But then the reading him backwards, I kind of thought, oh, this guy's kind of interesting, keeping on the back burner, of course, all the negative history about him. So then when I got deep into that, I read an important text. It was his addressing the reason to secede from the Union in 1861. It was really clear to me that I really didn't like him, and I almost hated him while I read that, because even though you want to love him because of how articulate he is and how intellectual he is, the way he expresses himself in that antebellum time period, he is very interesting, but he's pushing for states' rights, but specifically Southern states' rights, which he is including slavery, chattel slavery. So I did not like him reading him before the war. And of course, we know he's a Confederate, but you find out that he actually wasn't a Confederate very long. He had disagreements exactly over the topics you were talking about, the treatment of indigenous peoples and their rights. So then I read his letter to the Choctaw Nation, which I got printed. I forget the press, but I purchased it through Amazon because I don't have time to go anywhere, and it's not really safe to go everywhere. So, we got to buy online. But in the letter to the Choctaw, he really said a lot of things that really touched me. And this, of course, is 1870s, later 1871, I think, that he's expressing himself in this letter actually very similar to the way I express myself. I mean, he specifically finds moments in about describing a hatred for white male behavior and bigotry within people that look. He says, quote, people that look like him have treated other people unfairly, and he makes a very and again, 1870s, everybody's racist. So nobody is openly expressing the rights of others, or civil rights, or of course we might call it human rights. Right?
Well, there were people that were. I mean, there
certainly were
New York and New England, but
absolutely.
But so in your reading of that letter to the Choctaw Nation, was it as much about as much about human rights as it was about violating the honor of the treaties that had been made?
Yes.
Because every treaty that was broken was a broken promise, right? It was a violated honor, and Pike was very specific about honor in the world.
Yes, it wasn't mainly about human rights. There were a couple things he said in there that can be interpreted, however, but you're right. It was very much about honor. It was about he had been betrayed by the person that broke the contract a couple times. So it was definitely very much. You almost might. It felt something between. But he did have a kinship with the indigenous people from his time during the Civil War, serving in Indian territory. But I don't think that it was any kind of manifesto for human rights. But I found it interesting to note that in the 1870s, Pike is expressing himself in a kinship with indigenous people, and as well as specifically, at least I'd say 5 times, he does address it as the white man or men that look like him doing negative things.
Yeah.
So
if you want to see examples of this, you should watch Little Big Man, the movie. It absolutely plays it right at. So Pike was, in fact, he wasn't Secretary of the Interior. What was his? He was Secretary of Indian Affairs or something specific like that. That he was appointed after the war to manage the relationship between the American government and the Indian nations.
He was a lawyer.
Right. Fighting for them, right?
Yes. For many of the nations, he fought for them to get land, or at the very least monetary compensation, things like that. Again, none of this is meant to be engaging in apologetics for racist behavior before the Civil War by Pike, but we're engaging in these thoughts about how his milieu, or his almost like his personality changed later on, possibly influenced by Freemasonry.
As it would. I mean, if you've gone through something as calamitous as the Civil War.
Well, he also went through a lot of suffering. I mean, he had a lot of close family members die back to back to back. So he also lived with a lot of suffering that can change someone over time too.
Sure.
So really, not that I've concluded yet, because I do have some reading to do, but at this time, I kind of left it at, he's kind of mysterious. We can't exonerate him. There is definitely some hard, staunch supremacy, but I did find a lot of evidence that keeps him out of things like the KKK and that, so in the very least, we want to appreciate his arc, his arch, but not necessarily his pre-Civil War milieu of, probably white supremacy.
Right. His changeability just by virtue of the nature of his humanity, right? He was a human being and because of circumstances, he grew and he changed.
Yeah, that's the arc.
And that's what Freemasonry should do for all of us. So somewhere along the line, he finds Freemasonry. Is that before, after, during all this?
I do find him, he does gain membership before the war, but something to consider is antebellum Freemasonry moved a lot slower than it did now. So his ability to gain what we would consider Masonic knowledge would have been, quicker than we would consider, but it still would have taken time. And it also back then, you don't have the internet, you don't have, people so easily accessible for communication and to kind of get the information you need. Whereas back then, everything was still very secretive. So I can imagine it taking him quite some time to really, dive deep into some of those philosophical meanings to kind of maybe come to a brighter humanity. Ooh, that sounded good.
It's all right. You'll be able to listen to it in a couple of days, so you'll write it down. So as he's going through this and he's exploring all these Masonic avenues of whatever light is coming to him, and at some point he puts it all together into writing, and that's probably the biggest difference between then and now, is that in order to communicate anything, you had to write it down, and if you wrote it down, then it might still exist. So he's
not to interrupt, but I'm a publisher myself, and it's still really hard to get a lot out, and he published a lot.
A ton, even before his, and it's not even Morals and Dogma is not even his magnum opus. It's one of the many books that he wrote about so many things.
I mean, he was definitely a psychologist. He published like the same way that like Freud and Nietzsche did.
Mm-hmm. So how does Freemasonry color that? That's a topic I'm not even remotely familiar with.
Psychology?
Or does it? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So we won't get into that because I don't know how much time you guys enjoy the show, but I have given a program before. If anybody, no, seriously, if anybody ever wants, I do get
should have been the Jaws theme
on the psychology and alchemy and Freemasonry. If anybody ever wants a free program.
I think that's what it is. So yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Well, let's take a quick break. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back with this. No, we don't want to make the guys listen for a half an hour straight.
Right.
They can take a break. We can sell something. We can pay for the show.
Catch your breath.
We'll come back. Yeah, we'll come back and.
Okay. Mute my microphone and let Tim take the rest.
Well, okay, later.
At the Historic Smithton Inn of Ephrata, Pennsylvania, we're pleased to serve the latest creations from Weathered Vineyard Winery, along with spirits from Thistlefinch Distillery in Lancaster, all to be experienced in the tasting room of a beautifully restored 18th century bed and breakfast. Cigars by D&S Cigar are available for your enjoyment in the courtyard. The Historic Smithton Inn is convenient to Lancaster County's most interesting attractions, just minutes from the Ephrata Cloister and the Green Dragon Farmers Market, and a short drive can get you to charming Lidditz, thriving downtown Lancaster, as well as Hershey, Bird in Hand, and Intercourse, or Valley Forge in Gettysburg. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway or an active vacation full of sightseeing and attractions, the Historic Smithton Inn will be a welcoming oasis from everyday life, one that you'll want to visit again and again. Stop in and visit at 900 West Main Street in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, or check out our website at historicsmithtoninn.com, or simply call us at 717-733-6094. Just ask for Past Master Dave.
And we're back. We're back with our guest, Josh Gerstenlauer, who is a currently a student of Pike, and he's all excited about all things Pike.
I don't know about that, but
Hey, there's a quarantine. We're digging deep in the So Tim, you had a question to ask.
Yeah. So Josh, we were talking before the break about the evolution of your thoughts about Pike and how that correlates to, as Freemasons, as we gain more light, we evolve in our Masonic journey. Talk to us about what you discovered in that, your thoughts about that, etc.
Well, I mean, we kind of glossed over it earlier, that he does have sort of this arc that we want to appreciate. Not necessarily his pre-war milieu. I don't have a better word, like his personality, because I did want to mention that you said evolve. So like it's a great word choice because evolution means like always changing, just like life. He has this experience that he sort of changes over time, whether it's because of Freemasonry or his life experiences. I did kind of, it was a little bit of I don't want to use the term let down. That's not really the right term. I did go in with a little bit of prior knowledge that he might have this racist past. And, when you read about someone who's when you're going over people's heroes, a lot of people don't always study the person's history. And then when you study it, you're like, okay, this person has this great arc, this great story, but it looks like he came from a pretty not so good, not so what we would call good place with the way he expressed himself towards other people, and his beliefs about people based off the color of their skin, etc. But touching back to that, kind of the way my view of Pike evolved, and how I kind of really wanted to wrap it back to current events in my presentation. And for anybody who ever wants to talk about Pike with me or why they knocked down his statue, the most interesting thing to take note is that there were a couple of brethren that had planned on removing his statue, just because, whether it was out of fear because of all the other statues. And take note, I'm pretty sure he's one of the only Confederates to have a statue in DC. You can fact check me on that.
That's right.
But hold on, that statue was not of him as a Confederate.
Right.
And it was of him as a legislator, right?
And I touch base on that because he's not wearing his uniform. And I think the reason why he was not just because of his merit and all that other good stuff, but I think that because he had a contested experience with the Confederate Army, I think it had a lot more to do. Well, we don't know, because without meeting him, sitting down with him at the tavern and getting to know him, we don't know. But there had to be more to his disagreements, because he left the Confederacy in less than a year with disagreements with his superior officers. So I mean, and to be fair, not many people know this. He's actually a Northerner. He was from Boston, of all places.
Yep.
So as far as the statue is concerned, what I know of digging deep into Pike's head, he would have been there with the protesters, finding a legal way to justify it, because he wasn't really into statues anyway. He talks about how people glorify statues and forget about the people that the statues were put up for. So he is almost, whether it would have been out of his own pleasure for the protest because of being a kind of a aggressive lawyer himself, or whether it would just be out of the sheer fun of watching his own statue topple over, whatever we want to. I think he would have been there, leaning up against a tree, smoking his pipe, having a good time. But again, back to, there were brethren that were going to move it themselves, just out of for interest of the effigy, the peace, and with all the other things going on. for whatever reason, they were going to remove it, but they decided to be good, ethical people. They went to the city council. They asked permission. City council said, no, don't do that. And then sure enough, not too many days later, the public took it down themselves. But again, I want to be careful because it is sensitive. All these topics are sensitive to some people, to different people. So none of what I'm saying is trying to disrespect anybody. But I do feel the kinship I found from reading his works and getting into his head. And when I say textual analysis, I mean his lectures, his letters, and his artistic writing. I don't think that it would have been a problem to him. I don't think that as Freemasons we need to be hung up on his statue in a orthodox way like that. Oh, I said it.
Very good.
Drop the mic. Walk off stage.
Drop Jack's mic.
No, that's a very valid point, and it's something that most people wouldn't think about. I'm sure Art de Hoyos might echo the same sentiments, but because he studied every word that Pike has written,
and he agrees that there's no way that he was affiliated with KKK because of a number of reasons, but also people want to say that he wrote the Ritual, but if you look at the Ritual, it's very clowny. It's not Pikean Scottish Rite style, elegant Greek philosophy. It's junk, and that's sorry, not sorry, but the KKK rituals are junk, and so there's no textual evidence to tie him to them. As much as people want to, it just doesn't click. Yes, we acknowledge he was probably a terrible, at least in public, white supremacist pre-war, but we can tell that he, changed in some ways post-war.
Very definitely. So you mentioned Greek philosophy. You see a lot of. I've been on this bent for the last 2 years. That's the part of Freemasonry that, for the largest measure, is missing today, is the philosophical content. How radical was that in Pike's day? Was that something that was there but not observed, or did everybody get it, or what are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on that and this might be my own bias, but I think that it was probably a lot more prevalent, a lot more part of the meat of Freemasonry, especially in antebellum America. But on another vibe, I'd have to say that I think it's always been this same sort of not everybody is really in it for philosophy. And if you've seen the presentation, I've seen it a couple times where they go over. There's a Masonic program out there that goes over the several ways people come to Freemasonry and why they stay, etc. And only, some of us that we consider ourselves esoteric Freemasons that we have stuck around for the philosophical purposes. So I don't want to say that it was any more obvious back then, but I certainly think it was a more central part of Freemasonry. Yes.
Sounds like our 5 aspects talk.
Yeah.
I think he probably joined for partying, but
So you could say that some of them were at the bar and some of them were in the library. Is that what you're saying?
And some of them were reading books in caves and discussing them.
Right. Cool. So what would you say if an entered apprentice Mason said to you, "I've got this Morals and Dogma book. Should I read it?"
That's a good question, because that is, if it's entered apprentice. So we're talking about a Blue Lodge entered apprentice. I guess I just say, I anytime someone asks me, should I read? My answer is always yes. Because so many students do not, and adults do not. But so the answer would be yes. And then I would tell them, make sure that you seek out more of his titles, especially. I would always recommend someone read his 1861, his big it's not a magnum opus in his lifetime, but it was his speech to the people of Louisiana of why they should become a slave state. So if you can get through that and still want to put his picture on your wall, then you probably need some counseling. Wow. But if you can appreciate his Masonic experience, that I really do believe that something between his own life experience through suffering, so many tragedies, combined with probably his independent Masonic scholarship, which there's a lot out there. He did a lot. I mean, he was very, very active. I mean, you do not get remembered for 100 years without being busy, being a busybody within the Masonic organization.
Sure.
So,
well, he defined it for the next 10 generations. Yeah.
Right. So there's something happened to him, and I know that I really want to make sure that people understand that even though some people that were Masons at certain time periods, that doesn't mean that they were. He may have been an entered apprentice before the war. Maybe he needed to, get in touch with a few more books or people or whatever, or something from ritual that touched him, because it's really about the arc we're talking about. Is he had a change of heart. That's what I really. I guess what evolved about my view is I did see he evolved through a change of heart.
Well, Josh, you have these lectures. You've got one posted on YouTube, right? Do you have the second one up yet?
No, the link is up, but it'll be streaming live on the evening of December 20th. So it'll be available. You can join us live, or it'll be available anytime on our YouTube channel, Samuel C. Perkins, RAC 209, December 20th, 8 p.m. that night or anytime after that.
So we'll have a link to that on our Facebook page. Can we connect to that and heckle you from the side? Would that be okay?
Yeah.
All right, good. Count on it.
Pants optional.
Yes, pants are optional.
COVID rules. So anything else, Josh, that you'd like to share with us at this point? Any other events coming up, or Pike-related stuff, or Josh-related stuff that you'd like the entire world to know about right now? And 7 planets?
And 7 planets, yeah.
Oh, and 7 planets.
Yes.
There are other people on all 7?
Well,
according to Larry, yes, and they all listen to the show.
At least they have the ability to listen.
I guess just hope that everybody stays safe. I mean, and healthy. I don't have any other. If anybody wants to reach out to me, they can. J Gerst at pharmacytheater.org anytime, and they can post that too. Just if you want to arrange a presentation, or want to have tea and talk about Pike, or if you're interested in joining York Rite, just give me a holler.
All right. Well, let's take our final break of the night, and we'll come back and wrap up.
All right.
All right.
As far back as the mid-1800s, records exist describing the pre-meeting tradition of brethren smoking cigars during and after gatherings. To this day, the practice of smoking cigars remains very much alive in many lodges. This custom is considered a time for brethren to relax, exchange ideas, and enjoy the simplicity and fellowship that is the very essence of our brotherhood. This is what Hiram and Solomon Cigars is all about. Our starting principles are to bring Masonic brethren together in the harmony of a good cigar. Pull up a chair, sit back, light up any of our premium cigars, and enjoy the history. Hiram and Solomon Cigars can be found at fine cigar retailers. For a complete list, visit hiramandsolomonscigars.com or check them out on social media to find out when they'll be at a live event near you. Hiram and Solomon Cigars is pleased to be the official cigar of the Masonic Lite podcast.
Hello, brethren. Dutchy Doug is back with an update from my lodge, the Broken Plow number 377. Well, actually, I don't have an update from my lodge this month. We had a very quiet November hybrid meeting with a few brethren in the lodge and more joining us on Zoom. Gladly, there was no ridiculousness like back in September. I want to take this month's update to inform all of the uninformed brethren out there what a Pennsylvania Dutch Thanksgiving looks like. One that I have experienced every year of my life on this blue globe. It all starts on the day before Thanksgiving with the butchering of the turkeys that have been raised lovingly all year. Before the sun crests the horizon, our iron kettle full of water is coming to a boil and multiple pots of coffee have been brought out to the barnyard. The unlucky toms and hens let out their last few clucks. In all honesty, our turkeys only have one bad day in their life. Today's that day. After a quick kill, the birds are passed off to the pluckers. I've been a little plucker since the age of 5. Ironically, some people now call me a big plucker. In any event, the feathers are removed and off to the next table where the insides are turned to the outsides. And before you can whistle Dixie, the birds are cleaned and placed into stenners with cold water. At some point before 8 a.m., the first fermented or distilled beverages are passed around. When all of the work is done, my father starts his favorite part of the project, the weighing in. With a broad smile, the birds are weighed and their weight is called on. All of us are always amazed at just how much these birds grow in such a short time. The rest of the day is spent cleaning up and doing some light prep work for the big meal the next day. More fermented and distilled beverages are enjoyed throughout the day, of course. Thanksgiving morning, 5 a.m., I'm out of bed, placing the bird into the oven. We Dutchies like to eat our Thanksgiving meal at noon, so the bird has to get going. The morning is spent drinking multiple cups of coffee and preparing all of the side dishes. Finally, it's time. Someone will call out, "Zeit zu essen, komm mal Bube," which is Pennsylvania Dutch for time to eat. Let's go, boys. The table is set with the hard work of yesterday. A bronze, homegrown turkey. Warm potato filling, a true Pennsylvania Dutch delicacy. Now, filling is mashed potatoes with sautéed onions and celery, bread cubes, and enough butter to fill a churn, all mixed together and flash baked to produce a nice brown crust. A bowl of cream-dried corn is on the table, as well as some cranberry sauce, at least 2 sweets and sours, apple butter and cottage cheese mixed just right, and of course some fresh baked warm bread. Oh, and the gravy. Who can forget the gravy? A heartfelt prayer of thanks is given at a table with humble and gracious heads, all bowed. 4 generations of our family hold hands, and together we meditate on all that we have to be thankful for. Then it's schlock nigh. That's a common Pennsylvania Dutch phrase to say when it's time to eat. You should all use that from now on. No one speaks. No time to. Have to concentrate on the task at hand. After a filling meal, someone will bring the pumpkin pie to the table. Made from pumpkins, of course, grown in our own garden, and spiked to the hilt with rum. Ayama, is it delicious. At this point, we all help clean up and then slink to various corners of the house to breathe. At some point, we'll break out games of Hossenpfeffer, a traditional Pennsylvania Dutch card game, and the rest of the day will be spent with games and the occasional libation. Discussion about the upcoming trip to hunting camp tomorrow morning will also be had. Slowly the day will fade to evening and that typical November moon will rise in the east. Another Thanksgiving is over. Another time to be with family is over. Another opportunity to make memories for years to come. Another opportunity to carry on traditions that span centuries. I wish all of you, my brethren, a most blessed and joyous Thanksgiving no matter where you are and with whom you are. Till next time, work hard, stay plumb, and out in the lights when you leave the room. To learn more about the Pennsylvania Dutch language, culture, and history, please visit my website, padutch101.com, or my YouTube channel. Just search Doug Maidenford.
In Masonic news today, as the worldwide COVID pandemic continues to drag on and the dreaded second wave closes the doors of Freemasonry for another undetermined period, Masonic Lite Podcast would like to take this opportunity to offer these words of encouragement. This sucks. We miss our brothers. We want it to be over. But it isn't over. So until it is, remember, brothers, your obligations. And take care to consider the well-being of your brothers as inseparable from your own. And finally, this will one day end. And when it does, your dues payments will probably be late. That's the Masonic news. So mote it was.
Well,
that may have been the most serious news Walter has ever brought us, but
I know. I'm sorry. I had to put a joke at the end.
It was very good. Yes.
I'm going to point out that I do have 120 black Knights of Quarantine medals left. So there is an upside to the quarantine, yes.
We'll have a second wave of the sale of the...
Second wave of jewels. That's what we need. All right.
Tim, what are you up to in the next couple weeks?
There you go.
Well, it's still yet to be determined. If nothing else changes, which is a big if at this point, Eureka West Shore Lodge number 302 will have its December stated meeting on Monday, December the 7th, at which time we will elect our same officers again, which will be the first. Technically, we're defining it as not a repeat, rather a continuation. Because we have technically not had a repeat master since like 1870. So, but the determination was made that our current officers would continue another year. And other than that, not a whole lot. I mean, all of our holiday programs have been canceled. I think the Valley of Harrisburg still has a holiday program on the agenda, but with the restrictions, they may only be able to have like 14 people. So, yeah. So,
that's
really,
5 more than we usually show up.
But again, who knows at this point?
Right.
Josh Lamberton, what do you have coming up? Anything? Nothing?
No, our meetings obviously are canceled, but we're going to be doing a Zoom get together on our stated meeting night. I'm going to be trying to reach out. We had 2 candidates we were going to try to do degrees for this month, and that's not happening again. So I'm going to be trying to reach out to those guys. But other than that, just keeping the ship slowly sinking.
Jack Harley?
Wow.
Jack, what do you have going on?
Well, I'm not in charge of anything this year, so I don't.
Congratulations.
Yeah, right.
You're in charge of the Grotto's money. What are you talking about?
Sure. Well, I'm in charge of a lot of people's money, but the as far as running any sort of Masonic group, I am not. So I go where I'm allowed to go and when I'm allowed to go. And I'm not going to lie. My wife. I mean, we've got a new baby and a grandbaby, and so we're traveling and doing some things that we didn't want to put anybody at risk, and that's why I was not at Grotto. I did not need that exposure. So take appropriate precautions. Don't be foolish. This is not worth risking your life or the life of someone you love about. Just that's all I'm doing.
Josh Gerstenlauer, what do you have? Anything Mason wise coming up?
Chapter 209's year was kind of, we kind of just chose to reschedule everything for next year. I mean, that's the way it ended up, how we kind of pieced out every couple of months we got news. So for now, all the officers have agreed to stay on for the next year, and we will be holding a Zoom on our regular stated meeting night on December 14th. I believe 7 o'clock, and we'll be holding a brief election, just and a kind of a how you doing kind of a brief meeting, and then we'll have the part 2 of Albert Pike presentation on YouTube on December 20th, and that's 8 p.m. It's a live stream. You can enjoy it that evening or any day after that. That's what we got going on in Royal Arch right now.
What do I have going on? I've got a lot of tall cedar stuff, trying to get the banking taken care of. And Jack and I don't know if Jack probably isn't going, but I'm going to risk limb and go to AMD on Sunday.
I won't be in town, so I've already given my apologies.
So I'll see if I still fit in my tuxedo, and I'll be there and enjoy the fellowship of a bunch of brothers. So that's it. Larry, why don't you take us home?
Cue the chickens.
So special thanks to Everett Lodge 665 for making their beautiful studio available to us. Also to our producer-director Josh Lamberton, who continues to make the show great in spite of our efforts to make it bad. Also to Jack Harley, our news director, Tim Dedman, our marketing director, and to our special contributors, Douglas Maddenford, Jim Stevens, and Michelle Snyder. And pretty much that's it. I have really nothing to say. This will be aired after Thanksgiving, but hope all of you had a blessed Thanksgiving, and hope things get a lot better. This is Larry saying thanks for listening.